And then you would see someone like Saban, who came in here and put an emphasis on the way you carry yourself, the way you handle yourself, the way you talk to the media, the way you present yourself, all those little bitty things that we may not recognize and speak publicly about, but if you're looking for it, it's there. And it's very obvious. And I don't know if we've not been looking for it at LSU football, but we certainly have not been talking about it. But it absolutely has taken shape under Brian Kelly. And here in year 2, that seems to be the piece that has really propelled them to the front of the league in the discussion. Right? Because last year at this time, it was about implementing those small little details of squeezing that stuff out. Right? Like Major Burns, I remember, said on this set one time, he was teaching us, like, we had to learn how to practice. And when you would say, what do you mean? Like running station to station? Like, no, like keeping your helmet buckled up, a certain time when you can take it off, like never sitting on your helmet, never throwing your helmet, never yelling at a player, never yelling at a coach, like never, like the way you just carry yourself out there. And how that really translates and how it translates into how you play. I mean, think about it. You take the emotion out of anything, you're much more calm and focused, right? And not that you strip the emotion out of football. That's impossible to do. But learning how to measure the emotion, control the emotion, use it in the right instances. When it comes out, make sure and channel it here to get the best out of yourself is just one of those little bitty things that coaches, really the high-level coaches, one that LSU football has now, like Brian Kelly, that knows how to take that and use it as a competitive advantage for his team. And then speak so eloquently about it. Right? Like he could be up there as a politician. He could be up there like feeding you lines of BS. If he is, he's doing it very confidently and looks like he knows what he's talking about. But to me, I think he's a pretty genuine face value type guy that's just, he's a solid communicator and he's very confident in what he does. He knows that his formula works. He knows that his teams are going to improve throughout the season and be better at the end of it and should be competing for a championship when they have everything aligned. And this year it seems like they've got all of the right pieces at least set to go into the year. I mean, listening to him talk about Mason Smith and what they expect of him this year is totally going to open up a new almost style that they can run on defense. You could shade the outside last year. You could put your emphasis on B.J. Ojolari and Harold Perkins. You could double those guys up on the outside, and there wasn't that game changer in the middle that could beat one-on-one every single time, or that would demand a double team because you just couldn't solely block him. Mason Smith is now that guy, and listening to Brian Kelly speak about him is really going to allow Matt House to do things defensively that we couldn't see last year from them because they just didn't have the capability. They didn't have the personnel. They were still very productive for what they had. LSU's defense, I thought, was one of the biggest storylines of last season in the way that they competed, in the way that people stepped in and stepped up. But Mason Smith's a whole new dynamic. He'll beat a one-on-one block 7 out of 10 times. You'll have to double team him, which leaves you one-on-one with number 4. Good luck. So, I mean, I thought LSU shined on day one, man. I thought LSU was as good as we thought they were going to be on the podium, on the microphone, and really probably exceeded that.
And it still feels like that they're trying to throw the bait out there for LSU, like waiting for a quote whenever you ask a coach about AI, like artificial intelligence, and you're like, oh, I'm going to get a hit piece here. I'm going to get a quote from the LSU football coach, because if you asked that to Les Miles or Ed Orgeron, what would have come out of their mouth? And then you have Brian Kelly who's like prepared for the question.
Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
I recruited Allen Iverson out of high school.
Georgetown.
Right.
At Newport News, Virginia, hell of a quarterback.
Les would just be like,
I would have put him at DB.
Forget it.
where's my wife?
But you have that's
yours.
Yeah. That's the total 180 though, right? Where it feels like LSU used to be go back 2 years whenever it was Ed Orgeron. Look, what was the lower third? Ed Orgeron likes to run shirtless. Like that was the SEC network. Like I know they're having fun. That's fine. But what are you going to say about Brian Kelly? There's nothing to joke about.
No.
There's no fun to be had because he's showing up in his blue suit, and I'm gonna answer your questions. Y'all go talk to Jimbo if you want to quote.
No doubt. I mean, I think and look, I
or
think
Elon Drinkwitz.
That was part of the emphasis that Scott Woodward was looking for. I don't think Scott Woodward will tell you that. I don't even know if Scott Woodward would write it in the book 25 years from now. But there had to be a piece of him where, LSU was a punchline for over a decade at this thing. I mean, I was there. I mean, you would show up the night before. You would show up on Sunday. All the media members would be downtown at downstairs at the bar at the Hoover Hotel. And, the only thing they were talking about is what's Les going to do? What's Les going to say? Like, how goofy is Les going to be this year? It was like, geez, man. I mean, look at LSU. Pumping out first-rounders.
Punchline.
Got pro after pro after pro. And got Bozo Bozo the Hat, as the head coach.
Have a great day.
And even into Orgeron. I mean, like Lloyd said, I mean, to have that had to be when Woodward, as the AD, had to be a low point looking and watching SEC Media Day, thinking this is a great day for the brand to be shown off. And the most notable figure who's representing the program is known for jogging with his shirt off in Florida. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing? Like you got to go get a pro. You got to go get somebody who walks into the room and really you want to start hearing the cameras really start to shudder when somebody walks into the room. I mean, not picking their head up and waiting on some punchline, waiting on some joke to be told around the character. I mean, look, Scott Woodward comes from the school of Nick Saban. Right? Saban was the head coach when Woodward got his first job in collegiate athletics at LSU. That's what he saw. That's who he looks up to. That's what he's trying to emulate. That's what he's seen success behind. When he saw, the punchline that LSU football had become, it was about turning it back into a business. It was about turning it back into a company that was run with direction and vision. One that understood the responsibility that comes along with being in charge of the organization, and Brian Kelly is a great fit for that, man. All right, we got some cuts here from Kelly. You got a call sheet on this?
Yeah, it's in the doc.
Lloyd. All right, so Brian Kelly yesterday was at the podium speaking, and this is just a little bit of his opening statement. Just number one.
I hit him with a haymaker off the top. Offense, defense, special teams.
Anytime you're talking about an offense, and I sat here last year, and I would tell you that I had no idea who my 5 starting offensive linemen were going to be. That's an unsettling feeling, no matter where you are as a coach. We know who our 5 are going to be. We think we've got really good depth there. We've developed that offensive line. I think it starts there. I think it starts up front on the offensive line when we're talking about productive offenses week in and week out. Now, you've got to have playmakers. Let's face it. You have guys that have to make big plays because you can't go 3 yards, 4 yards, and win games. You have to score points in any league, and in particular the SEC. So to me, it starts up front, and then guys that can make big plays on the perimeter. Tie that into experience at the quarterback position, and I think you now have the makings of what you need on offense. Defensively, to me, it's been, right down the middle of your defense. Look, I think we all have gone to games. If you can't stop the run, you might as well go back to the concession stand because this is going to be a long day. So you start with being strong up the middle. And that means obviously the defensive tackle play, the middle linebacker play, the safety play, right down the middle of your defense. You have to build it there first and then work outside. To me, that's always been the way I've put together and constructed. And then you need selflessness on your football team to be really good in special teams. You've got to have your best players be part of special teams. It can't be a unit of second and thirds wanting to overachieve and be great. You've got to have your best players being selfless and understand how important it is to be part of special teams. Those would be, in a nutshell, how I would construct and put together offense, defense, and special teams.
More from Brian Kelly yesterday at SEC Media Day. Cut to Stewie.
Guessing this is 2. You didn't put 2 on it, but talk about that later.
Well, I think it starts with anytime you're talking about an offense, and I sat here last year, and I would tell you that I had no idea who my 5 starting offensive linemen were going to be. That's an unsettling feeling.
Double up.
It was late.
I got number 3. Cut 3.
Well, I think we had a good plan coming in, and the plan really started with understanding where the air was coming out of the tire. What were our problems? You have to sit back and assess where are our problems, and most of our problems were self-inflicted wounds. We had to clean up the things internally. We had to be more accountable. We had to have better attention to detail on a day-to-day basis. We had to be more committed to our academics. All those things carry over to what you do on the playing field. You're not going to forget your assignment. You're not going to miss out on the things that you're supposed to do in a timely fashion. So I think that's the first thing, and then you got to have your players clearly buy into that, and then hold them to that standard. A consistency of that approach is mandated, and if you don't, I don't think you can get that kind of quick transition.
More from Kelly yesterday. This is him speaking at SEC Media Days as he was going through the car wash along with Jaden Daniels and Mekhi Wingo and Josh Williams.
And I think in year 2, you start to work more on the individual and the development of the individual. We were laying down a program, a strength and conditioning program that was something that they weren't used to. And so I think as you get into year 2, you become a little bit more focused on some of the workouts as they relate to position groups. Wide receivers, a little bit different than defensive linemen. Quarterbacks, obviously different than defensive backs. So we've been a little bit more targeted there. And then we've been extremely careful with the weather. As you know, we like to train outside. We want to acclimate our players to the outside. But we've been very careful with our runs. So 1 day a week we have our runs. We've moved those runs to an earlier time to make sure that we don't put our kids in a compromising situation. But you're absolutely right. Year 2 has definitely been a focused year for us as it relates to making some training adjustments to the particular position groups.
Here's Brian Kelly speaking more from yesterday's SEC Media Day in Nashville.
Well, I think I can tell you what's similar. What's similar is that the calendar has changed so dramatically that it's making it almost a year-round proposition. We hosted official visits through the month of June. That had never been the case. I think we're doing close to 44 out of the 52 weeks or 7-day weeks now in terms of our schedule. I think 10 years ago we were somewhere in the 36 range. So the schedule in recruiting has changed so much that it's forced so much more of a commitment in your time, and no one's complaining here. I'm just giving an answer to the question about the month of June now is a balancing act between camps and recruiting. What I think is unique about Louisiana and LSU is the players in state. First of all, there are great players in state, and we have to identify them all and recruit them well. But if we do that, they'll come to LSU. Other schools I've been to, in Notre Dame in particular, I had to go to a particular state and pull the best player out of that state. That's a lot harder than being in Louisiana and being the flagship university. And if you recruit that young man the right way, like you're supposed to, he wants to be a Tiger.
Brian Kelly yesterday in Nashville speaking on the podium. This looks like this is the digital media room that he's in, speaking yesterday.
Yeah, I was asked that question earlier. Look, Alabama and Georgia are the benchmark for what we're looking for. And what is that in particular? It's consistency in performance year in, year out. We did it one time. So we're not in that conversation at this point. So what we're hoping that it catapults us to is a more consistent football program that is competing for championships year in and year out. We don't want any dips in our programs at all. And I think when you look at it from a tangible standpoint, what it did for us is it helps us in recruiting that we don't have to paint a narrative that's not true. In other words, that we can say, look, we're going to compete with Alabama. We're going to be able to beat Alabama. It's not a fantasy, it's a reality. And so there is some tangible evidence there that you can use in recruiting, but the rest of it is really about it giving you momentum for consistency in performance.
I love that part about Brian Kelly, that he doesn't run from that part of the competition. Really, I mean, LSU, not necessarily LSU, everybody in the league has always been almost so nervous to mention the big bad wolf, right? In whether it's been Alabama or now it feels like Georgia's, building their house on the block. LSU has recognized that that's the standard, that's what they're chasing, and that's who they want to play. That's who they want to compete against. And, for a long time, I think Alabama, really beat LSU more mentally than they did on the field. I mean, I think it was so surprising for some people to see how LSU was able to compete in those games and keep it close, maybe even including some of the team members that, it was the mental part within the game that would really kind of cost them. And, I think that is something that LSU is also not, they don't really deal with anymore in those games, in those big games, in those situations where mentally they feel like they're supposed to be there. They want to be there. They feel like that's what it's all about. So, that comes from the top. And Brian Kelly has been steadfast on that approach his entire time at LSU. Of that, he signed up to play in the league because he wanted to come play against the best. And he hasn't, really shied away from who the best is. And in beating Alabama last season was a mark on his resume that, didn't ever exist. He's been coaching for over 35 years. So, I mean, it means a lot to him to have these opportunities to play against the best within your own league. So I've always loved that approach from Kelly from the onset. Here's more from Brian Kelly yesterday in Nashville?
Well, we have great alignment. I think you have to start there. Our president, athletic director, Scott Woodward, Kelly Zinn, our chief officer. I think those things are sometimes missed when you're talking about success of a program. We've got great alignment there. The thing that really, I think, sold me on this position was the resources for the student athletes. We provide our student athletes a championship environment as it relates to nutrition, health care, the ability to receive an education and be supported. All of those things matter when you talk about a successful business or organization, and having the resources, and then being collaborative and cohesive. People ask me all the time about championships at LSU. Kim Mulkey's helping us recruit. Jay's helping us recruit. Those guys are national championship coaches, and they're helping us recruit. So I think that that's important as well, that you have a collaborative and cohesive department.
Brian Kelly yesterday speaking with members of the media here.